If you got nowhere to go, watch the Pocket Horse Show. Pocket Horse Show. Pocket Horse Show. Hey, Mom, close the door. All right, coming back at you once again from the Parts Unknown Studio Syndicate. This is the Pocket Horror Show. We are your benevolent hosts. I am the Pocketman, the Twin Weasel.
And I'm Eddie Horror.
And today, mysteriously, the lights all went out, so we're sitting here by candlelight, as you can see, and we're here to talk about the greatest horror villains of all time for special October, Rocktober, Brocktober specials of the Pocket Horror Show. Stay tuned all October. We're going to go through some creepy themes.
And speaking of creepy things, something that kind of rhymes or sounds like creepy if you say it a different way, Tales from the Crypt comes in at our number 10. Now, what do you remember from Tales from the Crypt?
You know, Tales from the Crypt, I remember very much the very first Tales from the Crypt. And I don't know if you remember the movie, Tales from the Crypt. Mm-hmm. So the very iconic character villain is that, I don't know if he's a villain or just the host, that creepy, decaying skeleton creature. But in the very first movie, it was just a guy. It was like a regular guy in a black robe who, some group went into a cave. And there was a guy who was talking to, they were like, how do we get to this cave? And he told stories of each one of the people. And they all did something wrong. Like some girl had her husband killed for money.
Oh, my God.
There was like a rapist Santa or something.
Okay.
And it turns out they all had died. And that's like the last stop. And then they go, there's only one way out. And they open a door. They look and it's just like a pit of fire. And they all jump into the fire.
Go through hell.
And that was Tales from the Crypt. No Crypt Keeper. It was just... That's what I remember.
You know, I remember the Crypt Keeper making a lot of puns throughout the shows. And Tales from the Crypt actually started off as a show on HBO. It ran for a few years from what I remember. I think maybe 6 or 7 years.
Before the movie?
It ran from the late 80s to the early 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the movie was made out more to be like a long episode versus the shorter episodes that were on HBO. And the thing I remember, just a different themes, a lot of gore, a lot of blood, a lot of hot chicks from what I remember.
Tales from the Crypt, 1972, British horror.
Oh, that's where it was influenced from, or that's where the show was influenced from.
Yeah.
Well, we learned something new.
Something new.
We've been drinking, people, so don't mind our research too much. But, making the puns I thought were always done. But I mean, I always thought it was a cool looking character, just something to really try and scare people, to scare you off. But
yeah.
I remember liking the show, but when I really got into it, because I vaguely remember the HBO ones, because I didn't have HBO as a kid. I remember they were on HBO, but they were later on, like, I think Fox or something, like one of the other channels.
I think it was Channel 13, actually.
Channel 13. Out here in parts unknown, KCOP, Channel 13. Not a major network, but definitely a channel that, I don't want to say B-level shows, but definitely the edited versions of Tales from the Crypt. And I remember trying to stay up and watch them, and I don't remember being scared so much. I just remember thinking, like, wow, this is cool. This is different.
Yeah, no, they were pretty cool show. I mean, for television, for sure, at the time. That was kind of the horror 80s. It was good stuff. This was the original Crypt Keeper, by the way. Pretty much Mickey from the Rocky movies in a robe. So
there you go.
Coming in at number 9, and this is kind of a collaboration where we say devils or demonic possessions in films. That's a great horror villain for any horror film.
Pretty much any guy that's painted in red or that has the horns or a tail with the horn, you know him as the devil. He's known as many different things throughout the movies. In some movies, he's that physical character. In some movies, he's an idea. But you know who we're talking about, the devil himself.
Movies like Possession, like The Exorcist, where she's possessed by a demon or the devil. Let's say Paranormal Activity. We don't know what's going on there. It's assumed that it's some evil force.
Arguably one of the best looking devils in the movie Legend.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And
Tom Cruise, the greatest actor
of our time. And the devil went down to Georgia once looking for a soul to steal.
That's right. So that's coming in at number 9. Number 8, and this is a movie Eddie said he never seen, but I think they're some of the best villains of the puppets from the Puppet Master films.
Yeah, when you told me the Puppet Master, I'm like, man, Jim Henson must have really gone out of his way to create something different. You know, going from the Muppets and having those puppets go on, then all of a sudden creating a horror film. Not really sure how the tie-in was there, but
I don't know if there was a tie-in, but it was. I mean, the story. If those who've seen it remember, it's some Nazi Germany puppeteer.
Okay.
He made some puppets, and somehow he got some formula to like live forever, and he put it in the puppets, and he lived through the puppets, or his soul transferred to these puppets. Puppets were like Blade, Jester, which is like some evil jester kind of guy, Pinhead, which had like a...
I've seen him from Hellraiser.
Yeah, kind of like that. But he was the Tunneler, which had like a drill on his head, Leech Woman, who would leech like blood out of you, and they were all evil. They would kill people for their life force to keep their master alive. I think that was the...
It sounds very interesting. Can't believe I hadn't come across that yet for some reason.
There's about 12 parts to
wow.
it. So if you,
wow.
if you ever
I figured I'd maybe come across one of those $5 bins, right?
yeah. I think if you check your local laundromat, there's a guy usually selling the latest part of
you know, it's funny because growing up, like a lot of these movies that we're going to talk about and characters and ideas that we're going to talk about really influenced me into what I like nowadays. And as a young kid, and I mentioned on an episode before, you know, we didn't grow up all Disney fanatics. We grew up old school wrestling, rock music, and my mom loved the horror movies. So that's something we never got enough of at the horror household.
Right on. I remember there was, if you remember, on Figaro and 228th and parts outside of Parts Unknown, there was a movie rental place that was close to our house, and all he had was like 80% of movies was either horror or porn. so all we rented was horror movies. They had the adult section that we didn't go into as kids, but yeah, I remember that. And he also had Nintendo games. I remember renting some Nintendo games. But
porn Nintendo games too?
There are some pornographic Nintendo games, but I don't think he had any there.
I just want to make sure. What's up next?
Coming in at number 7 is one of the scariest clowns in the history of movies, and we're talking about Pennywise from the movie It.
You know, the thing I remember about It, man. Again, this is coming 20 years ago when we were kids, probably 25 years ago. It came in 2 video cassettes, and for those of us that are in our mid-30s, later 20s, and older, we remember when a video was long. Nowadays, you get a 1 DVD or Blu-ray. You might get 2, but that's a rarity. But back then, the longer movies came in 2 video cassettes. If it came in 3 or more than that, you were in for a long day or night.
You know, something like Roots, that came in like a 10-part series or something.
Yeah, but It came in 2 movies, and for me, I was never a big fan of clowns. I mean, I don't hate them. I'm not afraid of them. I just don't care for them. But seeing this guy, Pennywise the Clown, and just... it was scary, man. Being that 8-year-old kid watching this movie, you probably shouldn't have been watching it, but definitely, I remember Jack Tripper was in it. If you remember Jack Tripper from Three's Company?
Yeah. You know, like I told Eddie before this, I'd never seen the whole movie all the way through. It's just so goddamn long.
Yeah, and that's when he said that, I just remember, oh yeah, it came in 2 video cassettes. Actually, I used to think it was a part 1 and 2. Honestly, when I was a kid, at first I'm like, oh cool, they made 2 parts.
And I remember I tried watching, and it was a little bit hokey. Just the little parts that I saw as an adult. I'm like, okay, well, I can see how it was scary. But...
well, you mean a clown from the sewer is not realistic? What do you mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I didn't really get all into it, but
and an homage to the clowns in horror movies and horror culture in general. I mean, Killer Clowns from Outer Space was one of my mom's favorite movies, and that, talk about cheesy. I mean, your classic B horror budgeted movie with just the cheesiest thing you can probably ever think of.
Yeah. Coming in at our number 6 is Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. Now. I think he was the most iconic villain from that franchise.
Definitely.
But
everyone knows Leatherface.
Yeah, but I don't know if he was actually the villain or if he was just like a tragic hero, because it seemed, I think the story is he was like a disfigured kid, and they put his family was some kind of cannibals that would eat people.
Lure him in.
And he wore a leather mask. He was ugly, and he was some kind of like just a man child. So I feel kind of bad for Leatherface. To me, it was...
that's when a movie does its job. When the writers, the producers, directors do their job. When they make you feel for someone who wears a leather mask and has a chainsaw going around killing people.
It was a complex character. He really was. I mean, So he made me laugh, made me think. So
well, what's for dinner or what?
after dinner, family relations and how.
I mean, it is a great therapeutic movie, by the way.
It is, yeah. So it's definitely the first one. Now, the first one, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, very interesting because it starts off kind of documentary style.
Mm-hmm.
In 1975, it's the most macabre murders in history or whatever. And man, they really did their job. It looked like it was low budget, but they really didn't need to do much. They just kind of threw you out there. And
do you remember a few years ago we were on a road trip, and I forgot where we were, but somewhere in the Midwest, and we drove through the slaughterhouse.
It was in Texas.
Was it in Texas?
Yeah.
You could see just this aura, and I remember thinking to myself, man, this is the perfect setting for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's right.
It smelled like death too. I remember that, and
gosh.
I'll never forget that smell.
Yeah, it was horrible, but the aura of it, and it was like, I think in the middle of the night we were driving, trying to get away from Texas, but we were driving and just seeing this aura from a distance, like, what the heck is that? What's going on? And just driving through, it was horrible.
Fuck Texas.
Yeah. Texans out there, sorry guys. Although I hear Austin's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've been to many parts of Texas and just.
Have you been to? I've never been to Austin.
Not Austin, but I've been to all the other major
okay.
cities.
Oh,
and Nacogdoches is the city of lights. We've been through there.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I remember that.
We had to do a U-turn and drive like 5 miles just to come back and do another U-turn to take a picture of that sign. City of Lights.
Coming in at number 5, we figured one of the scariest children in horror, iconic movie. Just so much to it. We're talking about Damien from The Omen.
The Omen was a 4-part series, and I vaguely remember The Omen movies only because I didn't want to watch them again. And, it's one thing. I mean, I like horror movies. A lot of the new movies I don't watch. It's too cheesy for me. But
there's some good ones out there.
But okay. But anyone can watch a horror movie with people. You watch it alone, that's a completely different story. Completely different story. I remember seeing The Omen 4 thinking, what did I just do? What am I watching? And I'm not going to say cover my eyes because I didn't, but scary.
Yeah, I mean, talking about new movies, The Cabin in the Woods, 2012, that was, oh, man.
Really?
That was worthwhile. I thought that was really, really scary. But anyway, yeah, The Omen, I remember the first, it's such a complicated movie because, and what's the thing about those eras of movies, they didn't really like, nowadays horror movies, and even starting in the 80s, they kind of, they make it very, very obvious that it is a horror movie. There's monsters, there's killers, there's this and that, where this is like, hey, this is just a movie with a possessed kid, son of the devil, and it just is just eerie about it. There's no jump scares, there's nothing like that, but I think
the characters, the writers made you believe it. They made you believe that this person was that crazy demonic person.
Yeah, it was just a story which was just weird, like Rosemary's Baby. It's just like, what is going on in this? It just creeped you out. And I remember The Omen. I still don't quite understand. I think they went. Remember when they went to the cemetery and they dug up his mother and it was like a jackal, like a skeleton of a jackal or something like that. I didn't get. I still don't get it. And
made you think a lot.
Made you think the housekeeper was her babysitter, and she killed himself in the name of Damien, and it was just weird. And did he die in part 4? I don't know if I got that far.
Again, this was a long time ago. I just remember thinking,
so he's still around. Damien, whatever you're doing, go ahead and comment to us and let us know what you're up to nowadays.
I remember I did give my mom that set for Christmas a few years ago.
The Omen set?
Yeah. Now I think about it.
Weird.
I should ask her.
Huh. All right. Well, coming in at our number 4 is some of the iconic, classic horror movies of the dawn of movies, really. And some people consider the golden era of movies. We're talking about the classic Universal monster movies.
And, of course, we're talking about The Wolfman. We're talking about Dracula, Boris Karloff. We're talking about The Mummy. We're talking about The Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein. All these classic movies that made horror, that are really influenced today's horror, even yesterday's horror. These movies started off in the 30s to the 40s, 50s, and so on. Your great actors such as Bela Lugosi,
Christopher Lee doing Dracula,
Vincent Price,
Boris Karloff, Price, Price
you influence people. And if you remember Ed Wood, the director Ed Wood, master of a lot of the B movies. Yeah, that just iconic time. Those monsters. People say, or I've had conversations with people like, what happens if they were to redo them? I don't know if you could properly give them their proper respect, because those were different times. I mean, a Dracula from back then would not hit today. So how much more can you really do? And I don't mean no Twilight stuff. I mean, what can you really do?
Speaking of Dracula,
he wanted Twilight in this list, brother.
You know what I was thinking of Dracula? Man, he's such a weak villain. I mean, he can't stand garlic. He can't stand sunlight. He can't.
I hate the sun too, man.
I
might be a vampire. Hold on.
It's like, wow, so many ways to kill Dracula that it's kind of weird. One thing I want to say on the horror, Universal horror, I think Frankenstein, I don't consider that a horror movie per se, and I don't even know if horror was a term back then, because
possibly not. Yeah, possibly not.
Because that was more, I mean, the story of the doc, and even the monster wasn't even named Frankenstein.
The doctor,
yeah, the Dr. Frankenstein. He was the monster. Yeah. He was the monster of Dr. Frankenstein or whatever. And Frankenstein was really the good guy in the movie. He was like a gentle giant, but the villagers they wanted to lynch him, and the doctor went crazy, and so
because he was different.
It's kind of weird. It makes you think. It really makes you think about that stuff, life.
But you look back, a lot of influence in the whole horror scene.
Absolutely, at least the lighting, the sets, the shooting style, which I like. Coming in at number 3 is a very iconic horror villain, which has been in so many movies. Return of the Living Dead, Night of the Living Dead, 28 Days Later, The Walking Dead. Of course, I'm talking about...
What about Shaun of the Dead?
Shaun of the Dead. Yeah. Of course, I'm talking about zombies.
Zombies have taken over the horror world in the last few years. They've always been around. Have always had great influence, but,
I Am Legend.
I Am Legend a few years ago. Shows like The Walking Dead really kind of resurrected.
What was that really shitty Brad Pitt movie? Z or something? Z Virus?
World War Z?
Something like that, yeah.
Well, not talking about that movie, but yeah, shows like The Walking Dead and some of the spin-offs, and even, going back to a few years ago, Shaun of the Dead, back to the 70s to Night of the Living Dead. It just, zombies have always been around. I think the idea, especially with today's, what we have today, and better makeup, better ideas, better storylines, they try and make it more realistic. Like, could this really happen? I mean, we could see Night of the Living Dead, be like, oh, come on, it's not going to happen.
Well, you know what? I think Night of the Living Dead, because nowadays you use a lot of CG, which I don't like. I do not like CG in horror movies. Night of the Living Dead use makeup and camera tricks and lighting to make Dead. And again, that I don't know if that was more horror than like a commentary on social society. They had one of the first black leading men.
That's right.
Who was like really the man of logic in the whole film. And I think they popularized zombies, I would say. Night of the Living Dead, George Romero. By the way, it's actually a what do they call that? Public domain film. There's no rights to it, which is kind of weird. But I would say the first time I remember zombies in movies was Plan 9 from Outer Space. From
That's Ed Wood film.
Wasn't the storyline? The aliens resurrected some zombies to do something.
Yeah, man. I got it. I don't think I've seen it yet, though.
You never seen Plan 9?
No. Huh?
You never seen Plan 9 from Outer Space?
This was like probably 10, 15 years ago. I went through this phase of like really get into old horror stuff, and I bought so many movies and so many trinkets and all this stuff, and I never really gotten to open them. Like I said, I got a Universal Monsters movie set for my mom about 10 or 12 years ago, and I still haven't opened it just because it looks so cool. And I don't know. I'm weird like that. I have a lot of that stuff just still kind of sitting there gathering dust.
Okay.
But I mean, one day when I get my giant projector in backyard and throw it on the screen, one day.
Oh my God, yeah, Plan 9, man. Maybe we should do it here in Parts Unknown and during Halloween, do a projector out back. Well, yeah, he had 2 zombies. The aliens resurrected them so they can kill and take over Earth. And somehow Bela Lugosi was thrown in there for no reason at all. He was some kind of vampire.
Yeah.
Or something, which is but yeah, zombies, classic character in any horror movie.
So the zombie although they're dead, will live on for a very long time.
Through the Cranberry Song, for sure.
Yeah, me too.
And so coming in at number 2, one of the scariest films of all time, made me stay out of the water for sure. I just saw it recently, and it really was scary, man. I'm talking about the Universal Jaws movies.
Yeah, Jaws was a movie that put fear into people thinking about going into the water, like the Twin Weasel just said. Not a lot of people know, but the shark was actually named Bruce after Steven Spielberg's lawyer, because apparently during the movie shoot, it didn't work, and apparently neither did his lawyer. The way I remember it, on Family Guy, they did a throwback to the movie Jaws, and they had the Family Guy character Bruce voice the shark, and I'm thinking, how's that tying in? It took a while, so I took that Universal Studios tour, and they mentioned Bruce, and it just all made sense, and I'm the only one on the tour laughing out loud because I realized the Family Guy tie in there.
Yeah, one of his first films, Steven Spielberg, and one of his best. I mean, 1975. So, really good. Anyway.
There's about 4 of them, right? 4 Jaws films.
I think so, yeah. No, there was Jaws 1, Jaws 2, Jaws 3D.
Ah.
And then Jaws 4.
Yep.
Coming in at our number 1.
Okay.
Well, first, actually, you know what? I want to do some honorable mentions.
Okay.
We said the Blair Witch as one of the iconic horror villains.
When the first one came out, it came out to be somewhat of a, hey, here's some lost footage, let's just throw it up on the screen.
One of the first lost footage films, I think, that made you believe, like, that was their shtick, that we were a true lost footage film.
I didn't buy into it when I saw it. I remember seeing it thinking, like, all right. Like, I understood what was happening, and I saw it, and I saw the ending, and yeah, it makes you think you're going to get your head chopped off. I get that, but I was like, I heard it cost like $10,000 to make this movie. There may be someone out there running around with $9,000 in their pocket, but I just remember thinking, I didn't get the hype. Like, I understood it, I saw it. I remember one of my friends thinking, like, man, that movie was so scary. I'm like, what are you talking about? That movie was scary.
It came out around the summer of '99, and I didn't
that long ago?
I didn't get a chance to see when it came out. Yeah, '99. I remember because I just graduated high school, and it was that summer, and I didn't get a chance to see that. I saw it years later on YouTube in 9 parts.
Oh, wow.
Part 1 through 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9
Wow.
on a phone, and it was, man, it still scared me. That was pretty good. That was a scary film. So that was my honorable mention. But coming in at number 1 is an icon. What?
Oh, well, no, I was going to say, it's number 1. It's 5 different franchises, so you could say 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E. We just couldn't decide. Because of the impact they've had on the horror movie business, the genre and whatnot. Yeah,
we call it the 4 Horsemen plus 1 of horror. They came right around the same time, same kind of theme, same kind of movie type. And we're talking about the legendary Freddy Krueger
from Nightmare on Elm Street series,
Jason from Friday the 13th, right? Or Camp Sleepaway or whatever. Mike Myers from Halloween.
I loved him in Wayne's World, dude. That Mike Myers, that movie was trippy, dude.
Yeah, scary as shit. And Chucky from the Child's Play dolls.
Child's Play movies, that's right.
And Pinhead from the Hellraiser movies.
Before I moved to parts unknown, I grew up in the South Bay area. From I think 11 years on up, but before that I actually grew up in Compton, and I lived on Elm Street.
No,
I swear I lived on Elm Street, and
like Freddie said, every city has an Elm Street.
Possibly, and I remember as a kid, I must have been 6 or 7, and I remember we watched. Again, my mom, big fan of horror movies. We watched Nightmare on Elm Street 3 on Fox, and I remember because it opened.
The Dream Warriors?
Yeah, it opened with the school bus. Remember that? The intro with the school bus?
No.
Yeah, that's how the movie opened, and then all the movie went through. And I remember as a kid being, oh my God, this is so crazy. And I was bummed out when the movie's going to end because it ended the same way it started with the school bus. And I just remember thinking, man, this is such a cool movie. And then, over the years, seeing the movies as I got older and whatnot, really loving the franchise.
Yeah, so many parts. Jason was another really, really iconic villain. And I think he came out on the first, Camp Sleepaway or something like that. And what's funny about that movie, Jason wasn't even the killer. It was his mom, Jason's mom, who was the killer. I guess Jason, he died at the camp under mysterious reasons, and his mom was out to get people, and he was like the ghost of that camp. So it was weird. And I think he made an appearance at the very end. He creeped out of the lake and Crystal Lake or whatever. They also made a very famous Nintendo game, very shitty Nintendo game based on Jason Friday the 13th. which I had, which is it's just terrible.
And what's it still called? Friday the 13th?
Friday the 13th.
And were you
for Nintendo.
Jason?
No, you're like one of the campers, and you have to fight Jason. Yeah, that sucks. If you were Jason, that might have been kind of cool, just running around killing campers.
And those movies actually merged.
Yeah.
Freddy versus Jason.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
and
yeah.
If, you remember the end of that movie where they fight to the death, and Jason has Freddy's head, and he's walking away. He looks at the camera and winks at the camera.
Yeah.
Just knew it wasn't over. It was
Part
awesome.
2. I love those versus movies. I wish they'd make more.
Oh, yeah. That'd be great.
Like Mike Myers, that would be awesome. The killer from Halloween. One thing I want to say about Halloween, which is very interesting, Jamie Lee Curtis and Mike Myers. If you remember, it was a big deal. His mask, his William Shatner mask, and how scary that was.
It's painted white, yeah.
But, and I think there was a movie like Mike Myers Unmasked or something like that. But if you remember the very first movie of Halloween, they actually took off his mask. I don't know if you remember that part. He ran into the house where two people were in there, I think having sex or whatnot, and someone jumped on him and pulled his mask off, and he's like a young Latino kid.
Oh, was he?
He really was. If you look back on it, check back.
Different parts unknown?
Halloween Part 1. I don't know, but he was like a young Latino looking like, what the heck? And they didn't really talk. It was really quick that he put his mask back on and killed whoever was there. But that I still remember that. And then Part 2, they were in the hospital. 3, it got really slow after the first one. They made a good Atari game out of Halloween, actually, which was very interesting. You played a babysitter.
What?
And you had to, like, help. I think that was the story, right? Jamie Lee Curtis was like the babysitter.
Yeah, Atari too.
On Atari, yeah, you played the babysitter, trying to help the kids get away from Mike Myers. Chucky, now, Child's Play.
Child's Play.
I loved that movie as a kid, and it freaked everyone out for Cabbage Patch Dolls.
Yeah.
My sister freaked the fuck out. We had to throw away our Cabbage Patch doll because she swore that it came to life one day, and that was that. So, I remember she said that she was sleeping in her bed. The Cabbage Patch doll was, like, sitting on the on the dresser, and then she, like, turned the other way. She heard, like, the Pampers ruffling. The Cabbage Patch dolls wore Pampers. She looked at the bed, and the doll wasn't there. She turned away, scared, looked again, and it was back on the dresser. And ever since then, we had to get rid of it. So
that's hilarious, dude. Do you still make fun of her about it?
Well, I'm doing it right now. I guess I'm talking about it now.
Let's hope she's a viewer, right?
So, but did you watch the Child's Play movie?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Oh man, it's been years. There's a tie into Child's Play 3, and I can't remember why.
Well, Child's Play, he was Charles Lee Ray, the serial killer who put his body in the doll. Child's Play 2, I forget what. Child's Play 3, I think he was in the army, the kid.
Was that it?
It was in the army or something like that.
That may have been the one we had. That's probably why, honestly. But I remember Child's Play 3. There's something about it. There's a certain tie-in. The Bride of Chucky wasn't bad either with Jennifer Tilly.
Oh, yeah.
Voicing the bride.
I remember it on the first movie. Some iconic lines in the movie. If you remember, Chucky was all tattered up, and he was in the elevator, and some old people were like looking at the doll. Remember, they're like, "Wow, ugly doll." And Chucky's like, "Fuck you."
Oh, yeah.
And when they were gonna kill him at the end of Part 1, he was like in the fireplace. Remember, and Andy, he's like, "No, Andy, no. I thought we were friends to the end." And he's like, "This is the end, friend." And then he turns the flames on. So that was such a good movie. And one of the weirdest movies of all time, or Four Horsemen Plus One, is Pinhead from Hellraiser. I saw it recently. Weird as shit, man.
Yeah, I vaguely remember. I mean, like the character, you can't mistake the character. It's definitely all leather suit with pins sticking out of his head. I remember there was a girl Pinhead too. At least that's what I thought. That's how I thought of her.
There was
in the later movies, probably one of the last ones. I honestly can't remember the movies for the life of me. I'm trying to think back. I remember seeing some of them, and I'm remembering certain scenes, but other than that, I really can't recall.
Well, I've only seen the first one. There's so many of them. Hellraiser 1, 2, The Resurrection, The Return, Hell Raises Again. But
Hellraiser goes to school or something like that.
Yeah. He goes to camp.
Yeah, Hellraiser goes to camp.
I remember the first one. It was fucking weird. I think it was a Clive Barker film, or Wes Craven and Clive Barker, one of those. And the story was some family, husband and wife. They were in a house, and the brother of the husband was some kind of loser, some kind of like drifter guy who never had a plan in life, but somehow the wife had an affair with him at some point, and he was in that house in the attic as like a partial body, as like a skeleton with skin. And the more the wife killed the affair, the more that wife killed people, he would regenerate and come back from hell. And when he was in hell, he was with the Cenobites, and the Cenobites were Pinhead, the girl, those weird demonic characters. They were in hell, and there was a box that they had to like solve the puzzle. I know, it was weird. It made no sense at all. To this day, I'm not quite sure what to make of that movie.
Well, now, no, not to watch it. At least not to make it my first priority.
It is strange. I try to watch, and I don't know. So tell us what you think. That is our top 10 horror villains of the horror era, I guess.
One more mention we want to make. We're talking about characters. We're talking about genres. We're talking about this and that. All made up, all fake. The one horror person that we know is real and scared the crap out of us when we were younger.
Don't say it.
I have to. I have to tell the people who it is. The one and only Papa Shango.